You're listening to Karmic Mirror, a space for self inquiry, honest conversation, and real reflections.
Our guests and episodes are here to help you remember who you are.
I'm Michelle.
And I'm Allie. We're so glad you're here. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Karmic Mirror. Hello, Michelle.
Hi, everyone.
As I was thinking about the opening of this episode, I kept thinking about Take Two. Not only is it our 2-year launch anniversary, we've been live with our podcast for 2 years. And this is also our take 2 of introducing a new format. So we're on video for those of you who like to watch podcasts. In addition to just listening, you can check us out on YouTube and Spotify, anywhere where you can see those videos. And this episode is fun. And I actually think it's fun that we already recorded our 2-year intro video.
Yep.
Because it's really a reflection on the last year and what has risen to the surface for us. Michelle pulled some fun cards just to kind of talk about in regards to our 2 years. And this really is an episode for those of you who have passion projects, who are building things. I think, especially for those of you in partnership, I am certain that today we are organically going to start talking about the nuances of our relationship as well and how we really forge together to use our gifts moving forward. And so, without further ado, we're just going to start recapping and reflecting on our 2-year journey. So, wow, 2 years, 60 plus episodes.
Yeah.
Never missed every other week. I think I'm just really proud of us in a lot of those logistics, right? We've seen our social grow, even though that wasn't our goal out of the gate. We've launched a Substack for those of you who prefer to read a little bit more about the content we're putting out there. Gosh, the list goes on and on and on. When you reflect back, Michelle, of the 2 years, is there something that really pops up for you as you reflect in regards to a theme?
It's just more of the broader themes of growth and just realizations. I think we've said time and again, and I think when I meet people who want to start podcasts or have friends who are curious about it, and I love sharing how we almost just approach it from a totally different way. We weren't thinking in terms of commercials and virality and all of the things that we tend to, these like invisible, or not invisible, actually very visible markers of what is considered successful, whether it be a podcast or social media following, all of the things, a YouTube channel. I think for many reasons, but like any learning curve, you kind of come back around to things that make sense in hindsight. We started it with just the intention of having really expanded conversations, meeting with people, learning about different healing modalities and esoteric teachings, and kind of branched into so many different little curiosity paths. But I think where I've come after now 2 years, and I think 65 episodes, as you said, because we've done bi-weekly or bi-monthly, but we've added in Liz's tarot
Yeah.
readings, and that's been really interesting to flex into. But I think it's just the long-term realization of how supportive a creative project and a hobby, a project, a collaborative, team experience, all of those things can be really, really supportive in the way that we've set it up. We don't have to worry about any type of pressure to meet a certain metric or target. And I think you and I have lived maybe our professional lives up until the last several years with real targets and metrics.
Yeah.
And so to be able to create something and know that those don't have to be the primary focus. It
Yeah.
just opened up doors for other ways that feel like success, or like you mentioned too, how we work together. There's just been so many ahas. I think those things are like these beautiful, they're gifts that keep on giving in a
Yeah.
sense. And that's been a big thing. I think one of the big themes that comes up is caring less and less about the things that you would normally get hung up on when you're
Yeah.
talking to when you're recording yourself and you're hearing yourself back, all of the sort of cringy moments, all of the judgments or the beliefs that you carry through your whole life. And the more you do it, the less and less those voices are present or those thoughts are present for you, at least in my experience. It's kind of like, okay, we're doing it. So even if I do feel a little cringy, even if I do feel embarrassed for whatever reason, I don't really have a choice but to just continue to feel it and move through it. And when you do something like that, that type of experiment, with a
Mhm.
partner, you
Yeah.
have that accountability. You can't just show up one day and say like, "Nope, I feel like shit. I look crazy. I don't wanna do it," because you have another person with you. So I think that's been maybe the 2, 2 really, really big themes that have showed up for me that have been much more abundant and much more supportive than if we were strictly coming at this from a sort of, I don't know if traditional approach, because podcasting isn't necessarily something we associate with traditional, but
Yeah, but there
it
are
is.
there's a lot of tools out there of how to
Mhm.
make the most money in podcasting, the
Yeah.
metrics and the rules and the marketing and all of the things that you could abide by. And yeah, when you were talking, we were laughing, or I was at least laughing so
Mhm.
much around our first take of our 2-year anniversary because I think when you were talking, I would say 2 things. 1, yes, there's the accountability, but
Mhm.
2, we have set ourselves up so that we're never in that position. If someone is really dire and having an off day,
Yeah.
yes, we can suck it up and show up, but we also give a lot of grace and leniency, I think without even noticing it because we've always just kind of organically worked this way with human design really at the core of it. And while
Yeah.
we're not a human design episode, we always knew these different systems were going to be a large part of and woven into the context of all of our episodes. And
Mm,
the
mhm.
design has been a really like geek out aha thing for
Mhm.
me in
Mhm.
partnering because you really do realize when we lean into our own energies, our own feelings, where we're at, and even where we're at with our cycles, we get the best in output and really the collaborativeness. I think it's really helped with our relationship as well of just understanding where people are coming from. And I talk about the video last week because man, how far have we come? I know that we had talked about this last time, but that I was really the one that was having a lot of trepidation about getting on video. And not that
Mhm.
nothing came up for you, but I would say I'd raise my hand and say I was the one holding us back. And then just being able to have a partner, part of
Mhm.
my emotional authority is I just need to say the things. And so while I feel like the first year of Karmic Mirror was really supporting my journey in my confidence in letting my voice and my authentic voice really be heard, this is now a new leap into being seen, quite
Yeah.
literally being seen, and it was really a mile marker after that last one that we recorded because both of us kinda showed up like, "Are we recording?" "Yeah, we're doing it." I mean, and we were laughing afterwards. I was like, "Can
Yeah.
you believe how far we've come that we were just like, I don't give a fuck what I look like. I don't we're just gonna do it. Who's gonna watch it? We're gonna put it out." And then
Yeah.
technology threw us a loop, and I'm like, "I can't find this episode, like, anywhere." And I laughed because I think this happened with our first episode too. We had recorded
Mhm.
on audio and then had to go back and record something just for learning,
Yeah.
and so I giggled a little bit because I feel as though that wasn't really meant to be our 2-year episode and our launch.
Yeah.
It was meant to show us how far we've come with
Mhm.
just being like, "I'm not prepared, I'm not" whatever the things
Mhm.
might be. For me, that's my thing, is always feeling prepared when I show up, and I think that was a real
Yeah.
tangible example of how far we've come.
Yeah. You know what's so funny? You made me think of the idea of being prepared and this being such a big thing for you. I'm not saying that like you just said it.
I no.
And also the fact that you're an emotional authority. It's kind of like it's like kind of oxymoron almost because you're like, I can prepare all I want, but I can't prepare what my emotional wave is going to do today, which is really fascinating. But I do, yeah, I mean, we showed up to that recording. I just was kind of go, go, go the last few months since March, really.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't really even thinking about it in the sense of like, maybe I should brush my hair today. And I didn't
At the very
today
least.
either. But because we record on Tuesdays and lately Tuesdays and Wednesdays are my kind of days off from the store, but it's my days to catch up on other stuff that I have going on. And so I was just like, I'm just going to show up how I am right now and be okay with
Mhm.
it. And in the back of my mind, there were all of those thoughts. I was like, whoa, you look wild woman, but that's okay because that's who you are today. And and then,
And it's so
as
interesting
things
because on the
do.
on the other side, I was, like, feeling rushed and whatever, and I was like, "I don't even have enough time to feel like I'm gonna be presentable."
Yeah.
And in my head, going back to these themes is I was telling myself, "Oh, Michelle's gonna show up looking so pretty, and she's just gonna be so put
Yeah.
together." And it's the
Yeah.
stories we tell, right? Of and here you are showing up like, "What?" And yeah, we've talked about this a couple of times on the podcast where obviously we built this podcast rooted in the same values and foundation, and we had the same goals, and we always connect back on those, making sure we're kind of not formally, but aligned on where we're going with this podcast and content. And what is also very beautiful is that when you
Mhm.
look at our natal charts and our human designs, there are a lot of nuances that some might say we show up very, very different in life, right? You're a quad
Mhm.
right, all four arrows pointing right in human design. I'm a quad left. That was the first thing that Sarah Duncan actually said to us when she looked at our charts. One of our first guests, is she was like, wow. And for me personally, I think I've really noticed how I've put myself in boxes and not only here, but what it's been a real reflection of is call it my life, my journey, call it being a woman of our generation and our age range, that the feeling of there's only room for one. And so if Michelle brings all of the beauty and the flowiness and the creativity, then what does that say about me? Well, I'm just the logistical one. I'm just this person. But that's my story. Like,
Yeah.
that's not your journey to well, of course, we talk about it and we met in coaching. Hello. So we, of
Mhm.
course, can work ourselves through that. But it has been really a personal growth and
Yeah.
journey for me of the story I tell myself because, hello, Virgo rising, I've been very, very rewarded in my life for the methodical, structured
Mhm.
details that I put into things. I'm also a Pisces sun, and we're also made up of a whole lot of other things. And so it was where can I stop comparing myself to
Yeah.
Michelle and realize that we both have all of these elements. They just show very differently. And at the end of the day, that is the very 3-5 profile of me is like, I'm always, well, how can Michelle and I use those to be most effective and efficient and moving forward? I think the other thing that really came top to mind is just my awareness around. I mean, I'm like such a hype woman. I like to lift all my friends up, and I love a lot of what you bring to the table. And so,
Mhm.
even those moments of like in jest joking and being like, well, you're a two line. And I think we talked about this before that there was one moment where you're like, well, just because I'm a two line. And when we started having that conversation, it is that partnership where I'm like, here I am, super envious, love that gift of Michelle's without taking a step back and being like, maybe these things cause her frustration sometimes too, as
Mhm.
well. And I think that was a real cool example for me of our conversations of getting to see from the other side. And yeah, I think that's the big thing is just if I can wrap it all into a tiny bow, is it's been a really beautiful thing to be able to share all the thoughts running around in this head. And, hopefully you feeling like you have a safe space to also share back how you're feeling about those things. Because again, as a 3-5, it helps me to understand more about
Mhm.
systems in you and I can understand through your lived experience how, your gifts might show up either with ease or with frustration because there's both. And from the outside looking in, I just always like assume it's so easy. Not assume, but it's just my take on it. Right.
Mhm.
And that's not always the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when we named the podcast Karmic Mirror, we didn't quite, of course, it was impossible to fully realize what Karmic Mirror might mean, 2 years in now. We're living a karmic mirror more consciously, I would say. Like if you're listening for the first time, Karmic Mirror was inspired by human design. As Ali had mentioned, we've done numerous episodes on different facets of human design, though we don't call it a human design podcast by any stretch, it's so organically woven through our conversations because it's part of the language, it's part of the mirroring back to one another. And we knew, I think, at least I can speak for myself. Logically, intellectually, I understood the idea, the concept of being mirrors to one another, to anyone in our life, any life experience, right? We learn this in so many other teachings, whether it's manifestation or just a lot of different teachings. I find this idea of the everything, every experience in our life, every person is reflecting back to us something, right? I saw something yesterday that talked about you can see how much shame you carry by how much you judge other people. And
Mhm.
so that being an extreme, right? But we share this profile line, the 5 line in human design, profile being your personality in a nutshell, mine being a 5-2. So that fifth line of being the person that there's a lot of layers to the fifth line, but being someone that people tend to project, you can help save this, you can help solve
Yeah.
my problem, you can help save this day. That's one facet of the fifth line. And it's very conscious to me because it is my first line. Allie is a 3-5. And so it's a second line for her being maybe something that people reflect back to her and she receives that consciousness through reflection. So all that to say, it's taken 2 years and counting because we'll continue to unravel and learn different aspects of karmic mirror, but it really is that lived embodiment of what it is to be a mirror consciously in partnership with someone else and to be able to see those things reflected back to you that maybe you judge yourself for or you believe you're not capable of, or that it's so, to use your words, so much easier for someone else or for me in this case, because there's that 2 line, which the 2 line profile is about. I know, but I don't know why. I know. And so sometimes you just know things or things can come, I think Jenna Zoe calls the 2 line the naturalist because oftentimes things can come really naturally. And for me, there's the layer of being a manifesting generator, which I really resonate with not wanting to be labeled so heavily because I just don't. I think, yes, I can have all these things be true about my personality and human design can enlighten me to all of these things that I know to be true about myself, but maybe didn't understand fully or accept fully. And also, I don't want to be defined by just those things because
Yeah.
it like really narrows down my life experience. So what you're saying, it's like, yes, things can come really naturally and really easy to me. And I think what I had said in the first take of this episode was that it doesn't mean that everything comes naturally to me or everything comes easily. And perhaps in certain cases it can be frustrating when something doesn't come easily, but I do think, yeah, I find the whole mirroring back unintentionally just by who we are, right? Like we're not out going out of our way to reflect back things. We're just
No.
living. I think the more you get comfortable in certain relationships and dynamics to just be yourself. I mean, it's like the age old advice that we hear so much throughout life and in movies and books
Mhm.
that at this point you're like, "Oh, it's kind of cheesy, but it's true," right? We have to preface it with that, but the truth is, the more comfortable and confident you are to be yourself, to be authentic and true to who you are, then the more we truly do mirror back to other people things because, about themselves, and we're not doing it on purpose. It's just simply we're just trying to live our own purpose, in our own truth, and by doing that, other people can be enlightened or see things about themselves and live more according to their own truth as well. And I think that's at the base of everything we've been saying. Yeah, that's just been the big aha of Karmic Mirror is, yes, we understood the concept of Karmic Mirror, but we've been living it intentionally for the last 2 years through the podcast, and because there's so many, like, if Karmic Mirror podcast is this little tiny, is the center of the circle, it's like all of the different lines that branch off are like, I went from cringing over the sound of my voice to being totally comfortable with it, accepting this is how
Yeah.
I sound when I talk, and then becoming more confident in the moments that I maybe don't feel so I just so that's one, and then it's like the next is, one other line off of that is being in partnership and not taking the right, like, I think not taking things so personal, not making I think I said this in take 1, which is so weird right now because as I am remembering things that we talked about, we don't have to make everything that someone else does or says or lives in their life about us. We don't have to make it mean something about myself because it has nothing to do with me. And, you can do a little digging and inner work to try to see what that scratches up for you, what maybe it triggers or activates in you that you see other people doing, but you don't need to make it this whole story that is your story, your life experience, it doesn't have to make it about ourselves. And I think those are all just like life skills that we all kind of need to have, but we don't necessarily just receive those skills or those learnings. We have to put ourselves in opportunities to do that. It's like stepping out of your comfort zone is the only way to grow past where you are right now. And if you don't, I think part of what I was feeling in the beginning of not having these sort of set parameters or metrics of what it means to be successful is that we didn't have a cap on what we could consider successful. So all of these unseen benefits that rippled out are so much more meaningful and
Yeah.
they're so much more than what you can see in numbers or in other things.
Yeah.
And that's really nice. It's like this very nice weight lifted. I always think about, social media, podcasting, all of these things. I think a lot about how what would my life look like if I had to maintain posting all the time, doing
Mhm.
all the like I would not be I would have already disappeared into my hermit hole for a few months and ghosted the
Yeah.
world if I were. And so yeah, all of those
Yeah,
are my
I feel
thoughts.
like maybe it was a year or 2 ago, we were talking and one of us had said, I don't know I would be doing this on my own," and the other one was like, "Yeah, I wouldn't be doing it on my own
Yeah.
either," so there's something really there about that, and I think when you don't have metrics that you're working towards, at least for me, I think it opens up the energy to do that kind of work and
Yeah.
that self-reflection because, right, it's almost like we're incorporating taking care of ourselves and the highest good and what for the most part, what lights us both up, what we both feel called to do. So it's not necessarily like a black and white, right or wrong. And those are those times where, I think I'll just give an example where we might show up. We've started less structure to our planning of
Mhm.
our episodes, and there may be times where we'll show up and you've got notes or topics or themes you want to talk about. And I can just feel it in my body. Like I wasn't prepared for that.
Yeah.
And instead of making it wrong, it's just feeling the feelings, we're going to move forward. And then when all is said and done, now, obviously, because I've done the work, it's tugging on those blocks and those shadows of I'm not smart, I'm not articulate. Because when I'm not prepared, sometimes I feel like I'm not as smart as other people, how they've shown up. Or if I was only prepared, I could have shown up differently. And it's in listening back to the episodes, very 3-5 again, where I swear there are some times where I'm so fixated on feeling like my whole body is still feeling like you don't contribute, you're not, right?
Mhm.
You're not the smart one. And then I'll listen back. I was like, no one, I don't, yeah, like you can
Yeah.
let yourself feel like that the whole time, or you can just take a deep breath and be like, it is what it is. And when I've listened back, there have never been moments where feel like it's, yeah, like who's who's this dummy joining Michelle on her podcast,
Right, right. Yeah.
that's never the outcome, and so those are the things again where, yeah, I could feel frustrated, I could be emoting energy, but trying to maintain that because I know it's not about you, right? It's about what's coming up in the moment. And again, with the partnership and the accountability, it's those are the things where you don't just take a day off and say, "Well, Michelle, I wasn't ready for that, so we have to come back tomorrow and prepare."
Yeah.
So with the karmic mirror of it all, it has really helped me to get more into my flow state as well, partnering with you, because I have that. Just because I have that structure and I really thrive and I like to be organized and prepare doesn't mean that genius and beauty can't come out of my impromptu-ness as well.
Totally.
But and I think we were also talking about how when we started recording, what has kind of dissipated for me a little bit in our audio recording is it used to be where I would think a lot in advance of what I'm going to say, what's coming next, what's the structure. And that has dissipated where I've been able to get more present. And then I know I had told you in our take one,
Mhm,
I said,
mhm.
oh my gosh, it was so weird to go back and now feel those feelings again because we were on video and
Yeah.
we knew that was going to go out. And so I
Mhm.
kind of started feeling myself getting sucked back into those emotions. Uh, it's that hypervigilance, thinking
Mhm.
through everything you're saying before you're thinking, as opposed to just letting yourself be and letting our conversation flow and go.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and it's nice. It's because there's always this exchange of energy. And I'm like such a sensitive, energetic being through the screen. It's more if you're at ease, I'm more at ease too. And I don't have to censor my self as much. Or I think we talked about this not in the recording, but just in general of wanting to pull back on things that feel present in my life, because I don't want to, yeah, I don't want to monopolize the screen time or whatever it is, or if I'm feeling picking up on something. So it's also just more observations, more things that you learn by putting yourself in these experiences. I there's just yeah, it's fascinating. It's like I think back to the first year, I don't know if we ever talked about this on the 1 year recording, but even how we deal with like disagreement or conflict. I think we talked about this a year ago, possibly, or at least sometime, and how
Yeah.
I am a person who's pretty comfortable with disagreement or conflict because I can bounce back. I don't really get in my feelings too much, right? But I also know that because I, in the past, can be really comfortable in that space, I would like not necessarily realize if it was uncomfortable for you and then I have a tendency to then like pull all the way back. And so it's a fascinating kind of like pendulum
Yeah.
to do to dance, right? We do this in our daily lives, but especially in this container of karmic
Yeah.
mirror of recording on a, consistent basis of meeting every week. There's so much consistency that there's nothing to do but track the data that we
I know.
of growth. It's just like anything, in coaching you talk about with people, when you have clients and you're trying to break them out or help them break themselves out of these narrow limitations that we carry. And I talk a lot about it's an experiment, and all of these experiences in your life, you have the opportunity to gather the data so that you can know yourself more, know what's working, what's not working, but also just how do you want to experience your daily life? And so in this particular container, it is exactly that. It's 2 years of gathering data on how we interact with one another. And I think but just like you said in the beginning, the fact that we have such opposite elements in our human design charts
Yeah.
give it a really unique experimental feel because
Yeah.
it's like it's like having a control group and a not control group, right? But it isn't, but it is in the sense that we have these almost just opposite personality traits and aspects to our design that make it a really fun experiment in that way. And
And Yeah, to that, it's when you think of the conflict of it all, yeah, I'm someone who freezes and runs from conflict, and that's not even necessarily in my design. So the like nervous system of it all too, of just it's that emotional authority. And so sometimes I'm feeling things or it's an emotional wave. And what I've learned is you got to not react in the moment, which
Yeah.
like I can understand different types. Like sometimes people just want to address it. And for me, also, when you have that, I have that huge block of just conflict. Like conflict is fear for me with my nervous system. And so I think what's also been interesting these last 2 years, because I've been on this dark night of the soul, because I've been really in
Mhm.
my emotional, mental, spiritual work, yeah, it can feel kind of overwhelming sometimes. And then also that really beautiful karmic mirror, because let's say there's an instance where maybe the energy is just feeling like a little conflict. I still go to a healthier place for
Yeah.
myself and I let you respond for dynamics than I would have in the past if I was feeling conflict. So, a lot for me, it is getting myself back to a place of what is this making you think? What is this
Mhm.
making you feel? Are those things true? And then I think with this partnership specifically, because I mean, this is the longest project and most consistent project I've worked on since I've left corporate America
Yeah.
and also since my big bang. And so I'd just be remiss if I didn't say like it was such a helpful piece as well to just take the steps back. And also, it was another hello, three-line human design experience, emotional authority of getting to feel, okay, you felt XYZ in these moments,
Yeah.
even if it was triggered by, let's just say, I can't think of an instance, but let's say something you felt comfortable being in conflict about, or maybe it was like sticky and you voiced it and then I just like shut down. It's like in those moments are really beautiful growth learning
Mhm.
opportunities because this has been growing for 4 years. We've known each other. That's what I
Yeah, yeah,
also
yeah.
Michelle, it's wild to think back of now how long we've known each other. And I always tell people too, I was like, it's wild. We didn't even meet face to face for like 2 or 3 years until
Yeah.
we met. And so I think for me, one, yes, it's getting used to working it with other styles. Two, acknowledging like, are you just frustrated or is this a block? Is this your nervous system? And it's been helpful for me to get to know myself more and my emotional authority as well
Mhm.
because there just are, I mean, I don't want to say like it's the frustration, but it's like I could have won $1 million and my emotional authority is low and I'm showing up just maybe a little crank bitch on the call or something. But, I think we both create a lot of space for each other in that. And so it's been really beautiful to see those things. And I think for me, it's been more about really trying to celebrate my strengths as well. I think I it's so easy for me to see other people's gifts and their strengths and call them, with decades of
Yeah.
coaching and learning and development, it's really easy for me to do that. And this has also been another lesson in, getting self worth and confidence in myself without
Mhm.
if I could just be like very open without having a partner that is like me, that might be more like, you're so awesome. That was amazing. That was so smart of you to do, right? Like not needing the validation or the feedback or the end of year
Yeah.
review to be confident that I'm bringing things to the table. This has really like stretched me
Yeah,
in
totally.
that way, like, how can you feel confident and build value about yourself when you're not necessarily being graded? You're not
Yeah, and I'm, like, I'm not that person. I'm not the we're opposites in that sense too, and I'm not saying that I don't really subscribe to there's a right or wrong way of doing things
Yeah,
just because that's impossible. We're also different, but I don't shower compliments on people just to do it, right? It's not I just haven't been that person, and it depends on the no, it really doesn't. I just am not that I when I have something meaningful to say that I notice, I say it or I tell the person. And oftentimes, like I don't want to say, I think what I hear the most back is that they tend to be seen when I do speak the praises because
Yeah.
it's not all the time. And I do think yeah, it's fascinating to observe, right? Like I think what you're saying, what comes up for me is that I think if you're I'm trying to think about the best way to say it, right? Because
Yes.
I notice in certain people in my life that are just so loving with their praise. I find sometimes there's also that connect to it's really easy for me to praise other people and it's really hard for me to praise myself.
Yeah.
And there can be elements of, like you said too, like, maybe if I had a partner who was doing all these things, sometimes there's that part of people that they're looking for the reciprocating compliments because they need to hear it, because maybe you didn't get it from other people, right? There's all of that, or maybe you did, and that was the marker of how I know that I'm doing right because you told
Yeah.
me I was. And so when I don't hear it, like, so it comes naturally to share a lot. And so it's really, again, it's just so many of the mirroring. And I think if I had to consider someone listening to our podcast, one, I could never control what someone receives out of it. But I do think if I were on the listening end and I weren't in the podcast myself, there's a really eye opening observation of being able to see two different personalities and see the ways that they approach similar themes in different ways, whether or not you resonate with one or you don't, or whatever it is. I think it's just it's really cool to witness because you said earlier, like, for me conflict is fear. Well, it's fear for me too. I don't go to conflict and think, yeah, I'm ready to fight. Like, that's
Not
not at
looking
all
for a
how I
fight every
feel.
day. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's not at all how I feel. I actually don't have a lot of conflict in my life, but because I mostly just say the thing, or I'm getting even better at it as I get older and don't give as many Fs. But I find that if I were witnessing this as an outsider or a listener here, it's like, yeah, just using that example, right? Conflict is fear for you, and how do you respond to it so differently? Conflict is also fear for me. I've just, because of my life experiences that are different from yours and vice versa, we just get to showcase, or isn't maybe the right word, but like we both get to share with other people, anyone who's listening, that there's just different ways to be and
Ah,
that they're all okay. When we started the first recordings of Karmic Mirror, and maybe it was like our original intro, we've always said, I think we said healing is not one size fits all, but I do think we've demonstrated in just showing up as we are, even when we're showing up not as we are, right? Like, we're all capable of being in that not self and we veer in and out of it. I think it's only normal to, but just showing up in that way really does, yeah, it just gives these two unique examples. Maybe one could say three unique examples of how to be, you, how you are, how I am, how we are, our energy intermingles with one another in the recording and in different experiences of life. And I think that's really fun. And what else? I wanted to touch on the last year of our guest experiences
yeah.
too, because we try to layer in. I think we probably, I don't know statistically because I haven't looked, but I think we probably have had a lot more guests this year than we did the first, simply just because we were getting our hang of things. And just like anything, as you talk to one person, it kind of like spirals into, "Oh, there's this person we can speak to." And that's been really cool. We started off this year with Nancy talking about all of the wonderful things that she does. And it was, and it's been really lovely to just be in the same spaces as a lot of these people. And our first guest of season 2, Nancy, is like just this wise, grounded woman who, I don't know, she just speaks like, I if I could describe her, I feel like she just speaks so fully from her being of who she is. And I really loved to just be in that energy with her. We brought in Melissa Lambor for locational astrology, which has been again, more gifts that keep on giving, because the number of people I meet they come into the antique center or I meet them just
Yeah.
in general and I'm like, "Do you know about astrocartography? Do you happen to have a locational astrologer?" I love when I hear people talk about their travels. I instantly want to talk about locational astrology because I'm curious about the other person to know what they felt in different parts of their travels or maybe open up the door to them to layer in another more intention and more meaning into where they travel and aligning that with what they want more of in their lives or anything. And you went to Guatemala for the retreat with Stephanie, and then we brought both Stephanie
Yeah.
and Shanti, who facilitated that. Like, I think that was such a big catalyst on your experience over the last year, but we got to share in that. Luminisa
Oh,
was one of
yeah.
our, I mean, just, and Ricardo. I, I just love these conversations with people because it's like this thing that feels so selfish and so unselfish at the same time. Selfish in the sense that
Yeah.
we have a podcast so that we can talk to people and have a excuse, which sounds so silly, but in the world that we live in, we're not just calling people up to have these 2-hour conversations and learn about your life because that's just not what people do. Like where people live busy modern lives, and there has to be a reason. For a lot of people, you can't just take 2 hours of your day to share your life story. But if it could help share what you're doing, your work, your services, that's what we want more of too. We wanna promote people that are doing cool shit, and so it's been like this double-edged blessing to be able to actually have an excuse or reason to sit down and learn about different people, to make new friends, to have resources for these different and skills in our lives.
I feel a little naive that, obviously I say obviously to you, my son consciousness in gift 37, it
Mhm.
seems naive for me to now in hindsight say that I didn't realize how important selfishly our guests would become for me. And then non selfishly, to your point, I was thinking that the other day because I think I talked about this that as I'm looking to move to either the West Coast or Europe, if you listen to the locational astrology,
Yeah.
that also came up there. I go back and listen and reference, and I get to listen again. And then I had talked about this on Take. I have been so lit up and geeked out over Taylor Swift's Reputation come out in the Eras tour, and it's all of her female dancers,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's just really badass. And so all of these women in their to me, it's my interpretation of it is like they're really exuding these strong, powerful in our bodies, in our own like unique kind of nuances of, how they portray themselves, how they move their bodies, albeit doing the same dance moves. There's so much uniqueness to it.
Mm.
And I was so called to that because I think nothing makes me feel more powerful than like women, and we'll throw Ricardo in there as well, of
Mhm.
people just really in their gifts, in their authenticity, at least when they're sharing with us, right? Of course, we know there's a lot of things
Mhm.
going on in the back end. And I feel really proud of those conversations because I am constantly
Yeah.
sharing these people with others. And it really does feel like I got a person for that. I'll have
Yeah.
people who will call me and be like, how do you clear energy? And I'm always like referring back to our guests. Just the other day, I was talking about how I had set up an area for my ancestors. And that was from Lumi. She was talking
Mhm.
about she talks to her ancestors as her spirit guides. And I was just visiting friends who both of her grandparents are in hospice. And
Mhm.
I was talking to her about Corona and sent her the death doula episode of
Yeah.
Dying Awake. And that to me, as a gift 37, for those of you who may not be familiar with what that means, it's my strongest, most potent gift that will weave its way in and out of all areas of my life. And gift 37 is really creating togetherness, community, family, friends. And inadvertently, our guests and our episodes have become this piece to me being an energy with the collective that I can give these little tidbits to people. And
Mhm.
so back to, my shadow of not being smart, not knowing it all comes down to that. This role of being co-host with you has also set me up for I don't have to fucking know it all, right? Like
Mhm.
I got a person, I got a resource. So for me, it's also
Right.
about creating resources for others.
Mm. Yeah. No, definitely. And yeah, like I just think about how one of our intentions was to build out a network of people who we could share resources with, and to watch it manifest in real life is really such a magical experience. I Should I talk about the cards I pulled a little
Yeah. Yeah.
bit?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I did it when we recorded this, which I think was 2 weeks ago now, but I do
But
have my notes
it's
still.
such cool energy. And for me also, I actually love thinking back because I think more things will pull up. But what
Mm.
cards do you have in
Yeah.
your collection?
So I pulled that morning we were going to record, and I was like, you know what? I didn't really come prepared with much. I just kind of like to show up and talk. And I thought perhaps I should commune with my cards, with my deck, and just see what maybe sparks. I mean, there's also the element that I need something to respond to. I don't always just I more often than not cannot just pull things out of that's not true. Random things do come up, but and talk about learning curves. I think I don't love being put on the spot, and it happens to me often. People you do this to me a lot.
Well, I can
The first
I
time
can oh, yeah, when I'm either sometimes I'm asking a question, I'm trying to open it up, and now we're, knowing
Yeah,
you
yeah,
well
yeah.
enough, I can tell when I'm asking you a question where you feel really on the spot, and
Yeah, like I feel
yeah, like, and honestly, I'll own up, sometimes it does feel like lobbing the ball over, it's not my intention because sometimes you just pick up with such ease, and
yeah,
other
yeah.
times I see it, like, right on your face, and I kinda but that's, like, the learning together, right? So
Or
plus
it's
you've shared that you don't like to be on the spot. We've talked
Yeah,
about
well, and it's so funny because this happens to me often, like, okay, also, and it doesn't happen too much, but there's so much of the projection field, right? There's the 5 line, there's the 2 line in my profile, there's all of these things that point to this. So, in my life, have I most of the time been able to just jump into something and just speak off the cuff? Yes. Is it always the most eloquent, or am I happy with it? No. And this is like more of the discernment of I think it's less about being comfortable with what I don't know. I think it's more of just allowing myself to discern the moments where I don't always have to have a response. I can say like, I don't know, I don't know.
yeah,
And
yeah.
or I just don't have anything to say on that, which I have done in the past because it happens so frequently. And there's that 5 line of being like the fine tuning of your discernment and your and refining the subtle energies that you can pick up on in your area, right? So I'll use this example that I'm talking about. It's really much easier now after practice of using that discernment when in being a 5 line in human design, people projecting onto you, so, "Oh, can this happens to me all the time. I do a lot of community service work in my local community, and so it's like, "Oh, Michelle, can you create this thing? Michelle, can you be on this committee? Can you do this thing?" Those are clear-cut examples where I'm like, "No, I don't have the time capacity or energy for that. No, I don't
Yeah.
want to." That's enough excuse for me too, not feeling it. And when I do want to do those things, saying yes to it, right? Like that's part of the work of human design of awareness, right? Feeling into my decision maker, my sacral. What do I want to do? What do I have energy for? But the fine tuning of these subtleties are I think a lot in those moments where I'm in a meeting or we're in a recording and I know that I'm being recorded, or I'm in a meeting, let's say with my Rotary Club, my service organization, and this happens a lot. Someone oftentimes will just out of the blue, I'll be like eating a chip or something, and someone will be like, Michelle, can you tell everyone about this program or about this project that you told me about 6 weeks ago? And I'm like, okay. And then, having to jump into something, it's fine tuning because even those are opportunities to pull back your energy. And, And I think the subtleties occur in those moments of how little or how much do I want to share? Do I feel like I have to? And I think this is something that comes up a lot. Am I feeling pressure to then perform for the group, like tap dance
Yeah.
for you? Because in the past, I may have done that because I can do that. Do I want to? Not really. So letting myself in the moment kind of give as little or as much as I have in that moment without overextending myself just for
Yeah.
the sake of like, oh, everyone needs you to explain this thing to them or tell them how this works just because they think it comes easily to you. And maybe you're not, and I think
Yeah.
in our
Just because you can
conversations,
doesn't mean you have to. Yeah.
yeah, and in our conversations, there's different nuances. We're recording a podcast, so I can't exactly, if you quote unquote lob a ball to me, I can't just drop it because we're recording. And
Mhm.
so, so there's so much more learning in that sense of, I don't know where this came up because we were talking about tarot and my dog like staring at me so funny right now. But that morning when we came to record first, I was like, "You know what? Let's just, like, give myself something to respond to. Let me kind of zhuzh up what thoughts come up when I pull these cards." And so I wasn't really thinking about a spread or anything,
Yeah, like, it
I don't
wasn't
really do
like,
that.
pull 3
Um
cards for what we need to know for the future of Karmic Mirror.
Yeah, and it was more so and it was also personal too, like, what do I wanna talk about? What are the things? Because I knew
Yeah.
you were gonna have your own themes, and so, it wasn't necessarily like a reading for the episode or reading for the listeners or anything, it was just
Yeah.
what can I needed a little bit of something to respond to, something to inspire what I could talk more about. And so I did have 3 cards that came out, and the first was the 8 of staves, and in my deck, which is the goddess deck with Chris Walder, is represented by the goddess Freya. And the staves, this is fire. It's fire in motion, it's momentum. And so it felt a lot to do with things moving really quickly. And I think for me, what felt really personal and timely was the fact that I'm still in a mode of catching up to my pace of daily life. Things are moving very quickly. And I think that's why I brought up a lot of ways in which how we've set ourselves up for the podcast allows me the flexibility to just still be playing catch up with my life and not feel like I'm dropping the ball in all these different areas because there's no, like, press down on me of, like, this has to happen a certain way, and it's not rigid, and that's really important, and so it's, like,
And
allowed me to what you were gonna say?
I was just gonna say we've also, had experience of that Thursday morning launch and like, "Oh shit, it says to be entered" in there.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so we really got to experience where it's like, it's
Yeah.
not the end of the world. And again, that's in partnership
Yeah.
because part of you're doing it on your own, who you're gonna get mad at? Yourself. But
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
that, yeah, it's the karmic mirror of it all, of, yeah, just going back to realizing that we never wanted this to be something that causes anyone anxiety, and albeit it brings up a lot for us, we didn't want to, what's the way I'm looking to say it, like, man make those expectations that would cause us to be anxious.
Yeah, to create more pressure than necessary. I think people assume that in order to create something really lovely and important, you need to put pressure and discipline. And yes, I do think discipline is incredibly important in many facets of your life. And also, I'm just a firm believer that some things can happen from a place of flexibility and you are allowed to create things. You're allowed to feel anxious and fear and nerves and feel them in the exact same time that you feel ease and excitement. You can feel all of those things if you allow yourself to. And so this card was a lot to do with just life accelerating this momentum of things moving forward and not letting yourself get caught up by the busyness and making things hard. I think that's something that is such a big theme for me of what I notice in a lot of people that I in the past maybe would be like, well, why is it, why are they making their life so much harder? Why are they doing this thing? And being much more accepting of it but also I think in partnership it really helps because I'm not really sweating a lot of stuff. It's just I
It's how 3 fives are put in your life for your lesson. It's that the 3
yeah,
we talk about it where you're like, and not all instances, right? Because you're
yeah.
but where you'll just look at either Keith, and I'm sure you've looked at me at times and just been like, you just wanna, like, grab the mouse or do the thing or, like,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's given you exposure through me, through your sister, through Keith to understand that there's just different ways of navigating through that, so I can
Yeah.
too that's been probably a reflection to you.
Yeah, so I think it's just not letting those things slow down the momentum in general, just kind of letting myself or letting this experience go at the pace it needs to go, even when it feels like you're just trying to grab everything and like quote, Freya, like stay on this horse, like keep moving forward
Uh,
without, being so like things have to change, things have to evolve. You have to just be okay with it. Nothing's getting super left behind that didn't need to already get left behind and being okay with that. The second card I pulled was a 2 of cups, and that in my deck is represented by Venus. And it's a lot about conscious partnership or 2 of cups in general. It's conscious partnership. It's the mirror, it's being seen. It's, co-creation, I think, and it's what has this, co-creation allowed to open up that maybe wouldn't have happened on our own. Like we
yeah.
said, and we talked a lot about what do being in partnership with someone show you about yourself? And
It,
yeah,
like, is Karmic Mirror.
that's
It's
exactly yeah.
what it is, like, the plan 2 of Cups feels like the seed that was planted of Karmic Mirror,
Yeah. Yeah.
knowingly or unknowingly. Yeah.
And the last card I pulled, the star, this feels like the exhale of everything. It's hope, it's restoration, it's navigation. The star, if you're thinking even your North Star, where are you moving towards, I think, and what are you moving towards with hope? And I also think on the other end of the star, the just authentic, maybe vulnerable, maybe just as you are in the moment, coming as you are to our recordings, right? Like where we neither of us are showing up to recordings like ready, like done up, perfectly polished and with our notes, I always, I have notes for this too, but it doesn't feel too precious, too perfect. And I think that in itself is very much the star. It's a light. It allows, I think, when you can, funny enough, coming from someone that is a Leo, I think that when you can be really, really accepting of yourself, or that we think of being a star, being a light to others as being this performative thing of being
Yeah.
like, and of being a certain way, bubbly or vibrant or whatever it is. But I think it can look many different ways. And I think one of the ways that it looks in the podcast is by just being come as you are, like in whatever moment, like we talked about in the first, but I won't go into it here, is like you touched on it, is we're going through the site or our personal cycles. So we're showing up with different, and I mean our hormonal cycle as women, and we're showing up at different points of the month to record. And I may have brain fog, or I might be laser sharp. I might feel really vibrant, or I might feel like a lump of like soggy bread, and all of those, like we said, you show up anyways, just wherever you are. That experience, not just the cycle, but of what is happening in our lives, all of the things, and just continuing to show up authentically, even though that word is just gotten, really so glazed, so big that it's glazed over, but just showing up as you are. I think that in itself is a light. And it's like this, it's not only a light that allows other people to do that a little bit more for themselves because they
Yeah.
see it's not so bad. But it's also a light kind of for ourselves in terms of, well, at least for me, like, what do I want more of? I want more of that. And because what's the alternative to change everything about myself so that I present one way? I can't do that. I don't have the time or the energy. I
Yeah.
mean, I probably, like, I don't have the desire to want to manufacture a perfectly polished version of myself to then be on camera and to speak, a certain way because I don't really have anyone to impress. But what's really impressive to me is to continue to just, like, love and accept the wherever however I am today. Like, what is
Yeah.
happening here? What's this? I don't know. But I have a haircut tomorrow, thanks the Lord. But, like, that is the star to me. We're constantly in a state of reorienting back to alignment with ourselves. And I think the mirroring, right? Like that is the one of the biggest keys to this. How do you do that? How do you stay in alignment? It's like put yourself in relationships or in containers or spaces where you're going to be reflected back things about yourself that you like, that you hate, that you're embarrassed by, that whatever. And don't let it be the thing that stops you from showing up or stops you from connecting with people. It's like just let it be something that you're curious about enough to start to think, to dig a little deeper, like, "Oh, what is that? What am I making this thing mean about me? And where is it coming from?
Yeah.
And how is it getting in the way of my relationships? How is it getting in the way of my relationship to how I see myself and how I judge myself or shame I carry, whatever it and letting yourself just, like, unfold into more and more of who you are in those spaces, I think.
The last thing that was coming up when you were talking about the star is I'll toot our own horn a little bit here is I think the way we've shined a light on people in our community or that have crossed paths with us, meaning our guests. And the thing that literally geeks me out, or my whole body gets chills and is super generator energy, juicy, flowy, is that we consistently hear from our guests. You guys ask great questions.
Mhm,
Thank you for making me feel so safe. I was so nervous, or I've always wanted to do a
mhm,
podcast. And thank you for making it so easy. I think also what dominoes effects from our relationship too is us being able to extend that grace to our guests, where some have really liked and appreciated more of a structure and to be able to
mhm,
understand what they're going to be talking about when they come in. Others are literally like, I'm an open book. I'm just going to show up. Some have
mhm,
wanted to meet us before that we haven't known. And I'm just really proud of ourselves. And I think the star card makes me think about also like shining light on that. And I think I'm just really proud of us for the
mhm.
exposure we've given to people and how we continue. I think this is really a space for mutual energy exchange because I do feel like we've given just as much as we've gotten back and continue to do so. I mean, I just find myself so much, not only am I impacted by our guests, but I really oftentimes feel called to share because they're part of my journey. And so I write about
Yeah.
them a lot in my Substacks. I share a lot about them in on social media and my stories just
Mhm.
because I mean, hello, it's that very generator. If I'm lit up and it's 352 and it's helping me, I just want to put it out there into the
Yeah.
ethos. And again, when you think about things like, we could have never foreshadowed, but the morning I lost my best friend and my aunt a couple weeks ago, I mean,
Mhm.
I went hiking. The first thing I did was put on that episode with Corona. And I
Yeah.
can't even tell you just the peace I felt. And that's for those of you who don't know, it's that dying awake episode. And yeah, so I think I'm just really excited when you were talking about the 8 of staves too, momentum. And I'll kind of
Mhm.
leave with these thoughts of at 2 years, it's like we're not. I don't know if we're where I thought I would be. I don't know if I had a thought of where we would
Mhm.
be. And I feel really proud because we've accomplished a lot more than I
Mhm.
thought we would have. And we've ruled our own momentum. And so that's the piece too. Even when you think about the metric, right? Because we can get into metrics, we've had more guests this year than last year. Well, a part of that is because it's more work to have guests on. And so, I know had goals to maybe at some point go once a week, and we've kept it at 2 weeks because that's what's really felt
Yeah.
organic and natural to us. So I love those cards, and I love how they even came back and had me really reflecting and reminiscing on
Yeah.
different areas. So just one, want to share a lot of gratitude for our guests personally, and then also for our listeners because nothing geeks me out more than seeing where people are listening from when it pops
Mhm.
up, or people who comment. And if you've made it this far, please come follow us. Please come join in the community. We love talking to not only our guests, but our community, and love being in conversation. So if you want to come, this is your jam and these topics are your jam, please come connect with us, whether it's through
Yeah.
Substack, YouTube, anywhere you can listen to podcasts. And it's at Karmic Mirror Podcast on Instagram.
Thanks, everyone.
That's our episode. Thank you for being here and for giving us your time.
If you loved it, subscribe, leave a review, or send it to someone who needs to hear it. That's how we grow.
Come find us on Instagram and Substack at Karmic Mirror Podcast. New episodes launch every other Thursday.
We'll see you then.